Welcome, Grace Sisters, to episode 7, season 2 of the Grace Sisters podcast. I'm so glad you joined me today. Grace Sisters is a space for grace where you can tell your grace story to inspire the next sister. I have my guest here, Michaela Black. Wait, I'm about to say Lambert. No, Michaela Lambert.
Yes, Michaela Black Lambert.
Michaela Black Lambert. She's a married woman. Respect her husband. I'm so glad she's here to join me today. We're going to have a candid conversation, and we just hope that you are blessed and inspired by it. So, Michaela, welcome to Grace Sisters.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you made it. What exactly is it that you would say is your grace story?
My grace story, I think I'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
When I was in my mother's womb, my mom received a diagnosis that I was going to be brain dead. And so when I was born, there was a team of doctors on standby. My mom has told this story many times. She's been on TBN.
I don't think I've...
She's been on shows and she's shared this testimony, but she shared it from her perspective.
Yeah.
And I've never really talked about it from my perspective. Ooh. So I'm happy to be here today to kind of share
that's special.
How that's learning that impacted me, because obviously I don't remember.
Yeah.
But so I was supposed to be brain dead, and when I was born, there was a team of doctors on standby waiting for me, because they just assumed that something's gonna be wrong with me. But when I was born, there was absolutely nothing wrong with me, and today I stand before you as a lawyer and a mom of 2, and I've really excelled in academics and athletics and just different things, and really, just thrived despite being told I was going to be brain dead.
Wow. So when your mother told you that, do you remember how old you were?
So I remember growing up, my mom, she would mention it, and I was younger, but I didn't really understand. And so when I got older and she told me the story, I was like, really? Wow. And, I think for people, you're always looking to see the hand of God in your life when you really, as you navigate being a Christian, and you're looking at people receiving miracles and what's my miracle going to look like? And for me, it's always been something I've carried in my heart, because from before I can remember, there was this miraculous done on my part, on my behalf by the Lord. And I can carry that and say, I'm thriving. I'm an attorney. I'm a mom. That's one of my most pride and joys. But the Lord, from the times of my mother's womb, he was working on my behalf. And so I carry that with me, and that's my grace story.
Yes, girl.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I just got chills. That brings to mind the scripture that he knew us before.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew what the outcome would be. Does that inspire you anyway? Your own story?
Yeah, and it's so powerful. I think I was saying, when you're in church and you see people go up in the healing line and they're whatever you see in church, you're always like, what is God going to do for me? Or what can I go get prayed for? Or, and just having that in my knowledge that the Lord, before I was ever born, he knew me. He knew what the doctors were going to say about me. He knew what I was going to struggle with. And he saw fit to work on my behalf is something that I think is powerful. And I don't really think I've ever spoken that, but it is a major part of my life, because I can always say and tell my children, your mom was supposed to be brain dead and she's not. So if you don't know that the Lord can do something for you, he can, because he saved your mom.
And you are literally a living testimony.
Yeah. And we are testimonies, and we send that off into the generation so they can know of the goodness of God. So it's really good.
And they have no excuse to.
Yeah.
You're literally going to say, there's nothing you can't do.
Exactly.
Look at me.
Exactly. And I've seen the Lord work even in my mom's life. But the fact that, I have so many miracles surrounding me through my mother's life and her struggles. And then also with me personally, I know the Lord works. Yeah.
That is so beautiful. I'm just taking a moment to take that in. But brain dead, like, it's not saying like, oh, she's gonna have, disabilities. Talking about you that you weren't even going to survive.
Yeah, they thought, and if I wasn't brain dead, there was going to be serious issues with me, and so they were ready to go to see what needed to be done for me, but they didn't have to do anything.
And I'm sure in that moment, God spoke to your mom, was like, no, this one is special. Like,
yeah, I hope that she thinks. No,
sure.
she does. And she tells the story, like I said, and it's her testimony too. It's something we share.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's another perspective.
Yeah. And like today is the first day I think I've ever really talked about it out loud, sharing with people, because I've heard my mom tell the story many times, but I was like, you know what? I'm thinking about my life and how the Lord has worked in my life. I have to start from the beginning.
Yes.
And it's something a testimony that me and my mom share that, I think for me, I think back to different things I struggle with, and I always kind of grapple with the spirit of fear. And, if I'm being honest, as a mother now, I'm sure if I had received that, fear would have tried to come in and intercept. And so when we talk about he knew us in our mother's womb, fear probably came in and tried to, root itself and showed up in different ways in my life. But he knew that, and he's a redeemer, he's a healer, he's a miracle worker. And so I've just seen his hand on my life and breaking free from the diagnosis that didn't work. And then the spirit of fear, that didn't work. It had to go, all those different things.
Wow. And the enemy perverses what God provides or performs in us. And so, like you said, imagine hearing that while you were pregnant. And then the enemy's like twisting that to say, this will probably be your story too. The strength in your testimony is beautiful, girl. So let's transition your journey to law. What did that look like for you? The schooling, what is, for someone who doesn't know, like what that journey looks like all the way from, I'll say, graduate high school, what decisions do you have to make along the way to get into law?
So to become a lawyer, basically, at the time you're in high school, you just need to be making good grades. And that's what I always tell people. Like, don't really worry about the law school piece, because you cannot learn the law. Really, some people say in law school you didn't really learn how to be a lawyer. It's not until you're on the job that you learn those lawyering skills. But when you're in high school, I think it's important to make sure you're making great grades. And then if there are programs available to you, legally related, that's great, go for it. But then it's just like, what are your passions and what are your extracurriculars that you enjoy? And I think you should just go for it. And there's like different leadership positions within the school, whether that's like, the activities board, or I forget what they're called now. Been out of high school for
do the math. What year did you graduate high school?
2012. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot you're younger than me. Okay. I often forget you're younger than me.
I'm an age that I will not disclose.
Did not disclose.
So just try to like make sure you're doing well, and you should be doing like pretty much. It doesn't have to be athletics. It doesn't have to be, or it could be athletics.
What about debate? Like, does stuff like that matter? Debate,
I didn't do
speech.
Okay. That wasn't. I went to a private school and they didn't have like all of the standard programs that I think public schools offer. Okay. So I was in leadership positions, and like also I was heavy in athletics. And I just think as long as your grades are good and you're showing that you're active in your community and stuff like that, you're good to go on that piece. But then you go to college, you're still doing the same goal, which is great grades and community participation, whatever that looks like for you. And then if you can get an internship here or there, that's perfect. Then you got to sit for your LSAT. And the people have varying sentiments on the LSAT. And I think talk is that they might be doing away with it eventually, but who knows? But that can be a difficult test to take. But just make sure you study, do little study programs and stuff like that. You'll be good to go. And then you go to law school, and that's 3 years. And then you finish law school and you take the bar exam, and then you're off to work.
So total, that's how much schooling?
So 4 years of college, 3 years of law school, 7 years post grad. graduating high school. Yeah.
Wow. And how did you keep your sanity?
A lot of prayer. And then also networking.
Yeah.
So when I was in law school, I remember being in my first semester, and back when I was in law school, back in my day, I'm getting young. No, but I'm getting older now, and I realize they've been changing things. Even though I don't feel that I'm like extremely old, whatever that means. They've already started changing stuff, and it's a whole new culture within like the law school curriculum and like environment. And so when I was in law school back in my day, they only had one test.
Wow.
So you take a class for the entire semester, and your final exam was your grade. Nothing else counted. And that creates extreme pressure on students. And since then, it's my understanding that they don't do that anymore. And they have, quizzes and midterms and stuff now. But that's how law school used to be, and how much of my professors, their experience were. That's kind of like the old school version. And so I remember sitting down to study for the final exam and thinking about how like my whole world, because they say your 1L year in law school is the most important, because it's like going to determine if you get a good job or not, because that's what all the employers are looking at, because your main focus in law school is like getting that first summer internship, because that can like be where you get your job offer after graduation. And so no one told me this, and so I went to law school, and I mean I didn't know any lawyers. I knew one lawyer, but she was just kind of like, went to my church. I grew up knowing she was a lawyer, but I wasn't really like extremely close to her. And so I sat down, I'm crying, I call my mom, and they're like praying for me. I'm praying, whatever. And my mom ends up bumping into the one lawyer that we knew growing up when she was at a conference. And she was like, Michaela's struggling. She's been, having to study, and she only has this one test, explain to her my situation. She's like, tell her to call me. And I called her, and she told me not to give up. And I always credit her, because I still talk to her to this day, and she's been a great helping hand to me. Just when I need advice in career and just really anything, she's been there as a mom. She has kids of her own, and so I've always just leaned on her and said, like, I'm struggling. Hey, I'm reaching out. And so I think I struggled, but I prayed, and I also used my resources. And I think that's the best thing you can do in life in general. Is like, you need to commit it to the Lord. You need to get before him and let him strengthen your heart. But then also he's giving you things in the natural that you need to pull on. And so whatever that looks like in, whoever's field, for me it was reaching out to another lawyer who'd gone before me and been through the same thing I'd been through. But yeah, that's how I made it through. It wasn't easy. It didn't look like how I thought it was going to look like. And when I say that, I don't even know if I mean that, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my legal degree. I just knew I wanted to impact the criminal justice system, and what does that actually mean? So it ended up all working out. But I think when you don't know lawyers, it can be very difficult and daunting and seem like much larger than yourself. And so it's always great to, like, if you can find one person that you can lean on, to definitely do that in law school.
Was law your first choice of career, or did you think of other things?
Honestly, I hadn't really considered anything else. I was, from a very young age, kind of reared up saying that my calling was to judge. Now, I know that you can be a judge in many different ways, shape, or form, but I always took it as I needed to be a lawyer. How can you be, what other judge is there? But now that I'm older, I'm like, you can judge in the spirit, you can judge, different ways, shape, form, or fashion. There's a lot of positions where you're making decisions. And so, but I always took it when I heard people say I'm going to be a judge, that I was going to be a lawyer and then one day be a judge. And I think the way my life played out, I saw so many injustices and so many unjust comments were made to me, or situations, that I developed like kind of a knack to have this like indignation to speak up. And I was very shy. I didn't talk a lot. Like I said, I kind of struggled a lot with the spirit of fear, and that showed up in many different ways, whether it was to like silence me or just, I'd be afraid to raise my hand in class, that kind of thing. So I had to break out of that. And I noticed, even though I was afraid to talk for myself, when I saw something being done to someone else, I could go off for them.
Yes.
You know? And so, like, yeah, I got to learn to speak up for myself. But, like, did you do that to my sister?
Right.
Like, let's go off. So from there, I was like, no, I'm going to be a lawyer. I can defend people. And so I think I didn't ever consider a different career, honestly.
You feel like your purpose is aligned with law?
I do.
You see your purpose, spiritual purpose in law?
I do. I think as I've gotten older and like learned about spiritual warfare and different things, I always say like, oh, the best prayer or the best like war person is probably someone who knows the legal terminology. Mm-hmm. And now like I'm like stepping into that and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I gotta fight. And you can use like the law to do that. And so I like the, whole paradigm of the legal world being also kind of transposed into the Bible, and just like learning all the judges and the biblical world or the spiritual world is, I think, enmeshed with legalism. Don't want to get too far into legalism, but there's benefits to knowing like navigating the courts, because you're like talking about navigating the courts of heaven. It's been really cool to kind of like unpack how it all is like interrelated. They have books on it. I'll have to like send you the links.
That would be an interesting conversation. Just that your profession aligns with the word.
It really does. It's crazy. Yeah. And like I remember I was talking to my mom and she had like given up the exercise. I think it was for one of her classes, and she was like, write a legal memo, like as if you were going before the courts of heaven, and like say like your demand and why you deserve, like before the courts of heaven, why you deserve what you deserve. And I was like, oh, I can do that.
Wow,
I know how to be a lawyer.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
And I remember I was working with this one woman who was a believer, and I kind of knew her personally, and she was navigating a time in her life where she wanted some like legal help. And I was like, I know you're coming to me as a lawyer, but I know you in the church too. And so what I want you to do, I want you to write your own memo as if you're in the courts of heaven. And so it was really cool to kind of like see that merge.
Wow. So we didn't talk about this, but obviously you were raised in the church. Your parents are pastors.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you growing up in a household of faith? Like, do you feel like you were able to stray a lot? Because the reputation of PKs. They always say they always say PKs are the worst, but I think it looks like that because of the strictness of the home, and anything outside of being cookie cutter is going to look like bad behavior.
Yeah, that's fair. Now, some people
really, they really.
No, I think for me, it looked. I didn't feel like I met that stereotype. I think people thought of me and my sister as like an angel, but it didn't feel that way in my heart. I did struggle with like perfectionism and just trying to like, look the part, make good grades, play sports, be obedient to your parents.
Yeah.
And breaking out of that mold when I kind of went off to college, obviously everybody has like a wild and out period. So to that sense, I went through that, but it didn't feel heavy on me.
Yeah. I
think maybe because my parents kind of, they allowed us to be ourselves, but they had expectations and they had like standards, but it was never like in my heart to like deviate from that. Yeah. And I think maybe it's just because I was so busy. I had so many activities, and like that's what I spent my time doing. So it wasn't until like I looked up and I'm like, oh, I'm an adult now. Who do I want to be? And that's like around the college 12th grade age, and I was like, oh, I have other things that I could actually be doing. But from the time prior to that, I was just so busy in activities, I didn't really care. But so for me, I do think I went through a lot of pressures, or just like dealing with people who maybe like had jealousies or whatever, PKs go through. But it wasn't horrible.
Do you feel like we feel more pressure as church kids? Like, Because sometimes it looks like they're having fun, even though it's not healthy fun.
Yeah, and
certain age, I think.
No, that is fair. So my parents had us in private school, Christian private school, and I always used to be so jealous of the people who got to go to public school because I feel like they just had so much more to do. They had so many friends because like my school is like very small. I think my class had like 35 people in it.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I felt jealous in that regard. I'm like, I wish I could be out there going to like proms and junior dance.
There's no prom in private school?
There
are dances?
They did not.
Christian.
They did not believe in dances at the time I went to my school, but they had like one formal, and then we had to like fight to have a prom, and we like really actually hosted it ourselves. So like it was in someone's like community neighborhood house, and like technically it wasn't like school sanctioned, but we had created our own prom.
Okay.
Because they didn't allow proms. So we found ways around it. Yeah. We were creative, but technically speaking, my school didn't like host dances and different things because that wasn't staying away from the appearance of evil, whatever that means.
Or was it like the leave space for Jesus?
Yeah. Okay. And it was like they wanted you to be able to dress up, so they called it like homecoming dance. And so there wasn't really, well, not dance, it was just called homecoming formal or something like that. And you could dress up, but there was like so many strict rules on like your dress, and there was no dancing. If you did dance, you had to be, apart from each other, stuff like that. Which, I mean, yeah, whatever. But it was definitely strict.
Will you send your children to private school?
They're actually in private school. They're in private school. And I think really now, I just think it's a sign of the times that I made that decision. Yeah. I am weary of the curriculum. Yeah. And so that's why I made a decision to put my children in private school. I think some of the books that they would have to potentially read, and I don't really agree with. I think there's a little bit more flexibility with like communicating to the administration when you're in a smaller like private school setting. So just maybe me being a little controlling.
A good mom.
But a good mom, yeah. So I want them to have a Christian education. Yeah. I value that, but I don't know how long. Or, like if I'll do that their whole lives. But while they're young, I want them to be learning Bible stories at school and having chapel. And I enjoyed that. Yeah. And I want them to have that experience. And it also takes a little pressure off of me to make sure they know all their Bible stories. Okay.
So how do you balance professional wifehood, motherhood? Yeah. And still feel like at the end of the day, I've done what I'm supposed to do. Like everyone's got a part of me, a piece of me. Because as mothers, it's like we slice ourselves up like stretch.
So that's a really tough question, but I think, and it's something I'm in the process of learning. Okay. I sometimes look up and I feel like I helped everyone but myself. Yeah. So I'm definitely working on a balance. But I think the Lord gives a grace for it. Because I was concerned before I had my daughter, like, what would my life look like if I had kids with, like, being a lawyer? And I think growing up, people always pegged me as, like, I was going to be this big businesswoman who stayed single forever and just traveled across the globe. And then when I met my husband, they were like, you want to get married? What?
So she balances her life. She's a mother. She's a wife. She is an impromptu praise dancer. I just love when we're in church and I just see but then you guys, she's holding, I don't know how much he weighs. She's holding her 18-month-old on one arm and the other arm is just woo 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 for Jesus. And I'm just like, go girl, because I would be sweating.
Oh, and I am sweating. I am definitely sweating.
I would be sweating, but when the Spirit moves, Michaela she beautifully displays it through dance, and God moves through her like movements, and you can kind of see like what's happening in the spirit realm as she's going forth. So, but she found the time in between all of that to be reselected as a national Black lawyer. Top 40, under 40. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
What was that for you? Like, how did that feel?
I was
to be among those?
I was super excited. It's always great to be like recognized. I think initially I was like, what, me? But then I like think about, I think it has a way of humbling you.
Yeah.
And then you also like gives you an opportunity to be proud of like what you've done.
Yeah.
So I was really excited. It took me a while because I'm like, but I do feel proud of like my career and like where I've come and how far I've come. And it's really good. I think they say the practice of law is like a marathon, not a sprint. And I think when you finish law school, you're like, I'm a lawyer? What does that mean? And then you get on the job, and after you've been doing it for a while, you kind of look up and you're like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. And you see some rhythms, you see some things you don't want to do and learn like that's not the practice area for me. But once you find like a groove and you find like an environment for work that allows you to be all the things that you want to be, I think you get a little bit more settled in the practice, because you need an environment for work, not just to be what you want to be in your career, but also what you need to be for home. And so that balance allows me to be a mother and allows me to be, have that tenacious career ambition and all that stuff. It's good.
So we didn't talk about that. What is your focus? Practice of law. What is your focus on your?
Right now I'm in healthcare law.
Okay.
And so whatever that looks like, if you're a provider, and provider means like doctor, nurse, any kind of like medical provider providing care, I do defense of that, or advising, compliance, anything like that. That's what I'm doing right now. I never thought I was going to be doing that. Like I said, I thought I was going to be working in the criminal justice system. But recently, I actually got a client, and I had just started in my new job. And it was just kind of like a spur of the moment call. And it's like, he needed a lawyer. And it aligned with a lot of the things that I'm passionate about as I like learned more of the services that he needed. And it was a nonprofit who provided care to people who are like homeless and have substance abuse and just basically poverty issues. And when I first started off in my legal journey, I worked in a diversion unit, which basically in that regard, you look for alternatives to incarceration, and there's a lot of programming surrounding it. But the population that you're dealing with, you were dealing with people in crisis who were affected by homelessness, poverty, substance abuse, all that stuff. And so when I got this client, I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy I can help you. And yes, I'll do it. And we work with him, and he was trying to basically get like licensing to kind of like expand the services he provides to the community, and kind of hit a snafu where he was denied something. But we successfully argued, and I was able to successfully argue for his reversal of the denial. And I just found that out like a couple weeks ago, and I was like super excited, because even though I'm in healthcare law and it's not kind of what I thought it was going to be, what I was going to do with my life, I'm able to, in that, still impact the community in a way that didn't look like how I was doing it directly at first, but still I'm able to like help nonprofits and people who are providing care do the same thing that maybe I was doing when I was in the criminal justice system. So yeah, the Lord is in the business of reversing denials right now.
Woo!
Yeah.
With them fans.
Yes.
Yes, the Lord is in. Repeat that.
The Lord is in the business of reversing denials. Yeah.
You hear that, producer? This is a touching soul.
Yeah.
Wow. So I was reading up on the. I think this is your most recent case, if you can talk about it. The 80-year-old with the shoulder. He had surgery.
And, my case?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Can you tell us about that one?
So that was a trial that I had back at the beginning of the year. Well, like February, I believe. Yeah. And so a doctor basically provided services to like do a shoulder relocation. And it was a complicated case, and the person had a lot of pre-existing issues, which included like having frail bones and different things. And so long story short, the doctor attempted a relocation. It didn't go right, and it caused like a shatter of the bones. Wow. And We argued for her. She was a very very intelligent, capable, phenomenal provider. And so we really believed in what we were saying. And it was just so great to see that her career and, how it had impacted her personally and be able to come out with a good outcome for her. So that was actually my first trial.
Wow.
That was like a week-long jury trial, and we were able to come out successful. So it was really cool.
So you were defending the
provider
provider against the 80-year-old who claimed that he had issues with the surgery.
Well, so actually the woman, the 80-year-old had a pass, but her estate basically was bringing actions and of negligence about the care provided. But we really believed in the care, and we were grateful that she received a good outcome.
Do emotions ever play a part in your decisions, or do you separate? Do you kind of disassociate your emotions or how you feel about your client? Like, you probably could see her passion for what she does, and you're like, okay, she really means this.
I think it's hard sometimes when you see how much something means to someone to keep a balance. You still have to do your job. You have to be professional, and you definitely do take on some of the burden that person may be experiencing. And I liken it to even when I was working in the criminal justice system. You're dealing with people who are at their lowest point, or you're dealing with someone who this is the worst thing that ever happened to them. And so you have to be a bit of they call lawyers counselors. You have to be a counselor and kind of help that person navigate the emotions of it all, because, like I said, it's the lowest point. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me. It makes some people want to quit their job. So they're doctors of 30 years and they get a complaint and they're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, because I was doing the best I could.
And their reputation.
And so, you do have that counseling ability to be able to kind of navigate that with the client. And then you also have to think about how it impacts you, because you can take it on and, make yourself be all nervous and everything, but you have to maintain that composure and present what happened and tell the story in the way that it happened. So, yeah.
Was there ever a case that questioned, where you had to weigh your ethical values, as a Christian woman, and you were hesitant to take it on, or?
I think for me, it wasn't really necessarily about my Christian values, but it did create a pause in me. And that was when I was in the criminal justice system and I was working in the juvenile unit. I was a prosecutor. And when I was in court and I was seeing the children come in, and they had done some egregious things. But when you were kind of before the court and hearing the youth speak, and you begin to see that they really were, in fact, children, and that they had the capacity and the knowledge of a child. And I was pregnant at the time, and so I was having all those mom emotions, and I immediately this is a child. They might have just hijacked someone's car and threw them down on the ground, but they don't even, they're a baby, And then also you would see kids come in, you would see their parents, and then you would see they were neglected and now they found themselves here. You would have those emotions. And so I think that was the first time in my career where I was like, am I doing what I don't think I want to do this.
Right.
And luckily I was able to kind of navigate away from that practice, but I think that was the first time where I realized, I don't know if I have the gut for this. Although I believed in what I was doing, because we were given the opportunity in my first position to come up with creative alternatives. And so I didn't feel like I had to be punitive. I felt like I had the ability to be like, yes, you did this, and let's see how we can make it right in a way that's not going to ruin your life forever. And I'm completely grateful for that, because not all prosecutor offices are that way. But I think for me, that was the first gut check I had. And it was the first time I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I was going to bed and I was seeing all the little kids' names and I closed my eyes and I was like, oh my God, I was seeing their file pop up and I was like, maybe this, I need to
laugh for me.
This is causing me a little stress. And so, cause they are I mean, we're all people.
Right.
But to me, youth are more vulnerable. They are a vulnerable population.
And they're still developing.
Yeah, they're still developing.
Emotionally, mentally.
Exactly. So that was the first, I think, time in my career where I was like, I don't know if this is the practice for me, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's beautiful that you're still making an impact even in the medical side, because it's all connected. Like the effect of winning a case can affect it on the criminal justice side.
Yeah. And so like I do civil litigation now as opposed to criminal practice. And so I think any way that I can find that kind of touches or merges with that has been really cool. So there's some allegations of like patient abuse, which there's also like a criminal case that will run parallel to that. And so I still get to like, you know, look at police reports and different things. And I'm like, oh, I know how to look at a police report now. And so it's been really cool, even though I'm kind of removed from it, to find ways which I can still kind of hit on it. And I also do like a lot of pro bono work with like they call it the Innocence Project. And so people who feel they were wrongfully convicted, I get to like review their cases and write like reports on whether they should investigate it further, and like kind of do a lot of work in like the innocence space that are people who've been like received life sentences.
So would you say that your profession is male dominated?
Oh, for sure.
How do you show up as a Black woman in that space?
I show up, I put my clothes on every day and I walk out. So that's a really deep question. I think we grapple with this.
Yeah.
And then we're always going to grapple with it forever.
Yeah.
I know that for women is one thing, and then being a Black woman is another thing. And then just being a Black person, then being a woman, then being a Black person that is a woman. So it's like about 2%, maybe a little over 2% of Black attorneys in the United States represent 2%. And so it's like, okay, what does that mean? And I've been in some spaces where I'm the only Black attorney, like more than once. Wow. I go in the courtroom and I could be the only Black attorney. And I've been in spaces, even when I was in law school, where I was the only Black person, you know, representation in that particular environment at the time. And like, I recall when I was in law school, I was moving out of my apartment and I was moving down the street to like a better apartment. And I had all my stuff with me because I was like moving stuff to my car. And one of my law colleagues, her mother was with her, and she looked at me. I had on my UVA shirt because that's where I graduated. And so, you know, like, okay, I'm reading the part. And she was like, do you clean houses? She needs her house cleaned. And I was like, my classmate was like completely shell shocked. Mom, no, that's my classmate. Mom, no. And she's like,
the classmate of the other persuader?
Yeah. Oh. Of course. And I'm like, oh, because I have like my belongings with me. I'm like maid. Like I don't. Anyways, so it's been situations like that. It's been going to the courtroom and being presumed to be the defendant. It's been, and I'm got a full-fledged suit, and you know, it's being assumed as a woman that you're like the court reporter. It's all of the things, and it's happened to me on more than one occasion, and I feel upset when it first happens, but then I just want to do a good job, you know. And so I think for me, I have a level of like pride to do what I do because I know that it's needed and people need to be seen that look like me. And a lot of times I'll get a call from people and they're just calling me because they want a Black attorney. And I mean, that happens multiple times a week. And I can't help them because I don't practice that particular practice area. But they sound so let down that I can't be their lawyer. And it makes me sad. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I'll try to refer you to someone, but I don't do that type of law. You wouldn't want me to do that.
I think it's a trust, a representation thing.
Yeah. And so people want that, and it's definitely, we need more Black attorneys, Black women attorneys. And I mean, I try to encourage people who are younger than me, who want to be lawyers. I like reach out to law schools, and like I'll get like law students that email me, and I'll try to make sure I have coffee with them and give them advice and different things, because it's definitely needed. But you just do the best that you can. So when you show up, you do a good job and you are very thorough and all those things. So when people think of you, they don't immediately go to a bad experience. And then that carries a weight, and added weight, that I don't think I need to take on, but obviously I do. But so it's definitely can feel heavy at times, but I also feel proud to be able to be a representation for people who want someone who can relate to them. Yeah.
And that 2% is astounding to me. I'll speak from experience. At one point in time when I was younger, I mean, it's the thing you say when you're like 8, 10, doctor, lawyer, teacher.
Right.
You know, the exciting things, and your parents like, oh. I think for me, fear played a part. Mm-hmm. So I want to say to you, thank you. You're inspiring. Oh. And
thank you.
I'm already pregnant and emotional, but you're inspiring, and baby's kicking too.
Oh.
Baby agrees. But I want you to know that your representation does matter, and your voice matters.
Thank you.
And because you have a daughter, I know you already know the weight of that.
Yeah, it definitely.
So she's proud to look up to you.
Yeah.
And know that her mom is making a difference. Like, she may not understand it right now, but the impact you'll have like years from now is astounding. Like, for the future generation. Mm-hmm.
I thank you for sharing that. When I first started my legal career, there was a woman in my first position who really, she's a Black woman, and she actually just won judgeship up in Pennsylvania, and she had 3 daughters, and I think 2 of them became lawyers. And then when she was running for judge, her daughter actually ran her campaign. The only one who wasn't a lawyer ran her campaign. And so it was beautiful to see her dream come true, and that her daughter's like following her legacy. And also the one who's not an attorney ran a successful campaign. I mean, it was really fabulous. And so when I think of my daughter, or even for Sammy, but most especially for Sky, my daughter, she is so much like me, and she's very opinionated. Yeah. And I see her as being a very good spokeswoman, whatever she wants to do. I'm not going to force her, obviously, down my path. But I definitely, when she's like, Mommy, you have to do your work. You do your work. You do your job, you know. And it makes me proud, because I can be that example for her. But also, you know, you still feel those kind of tuggings where, like, I want to spend more time. I want to. But I think her seeing me work, and she'll go sit in my desk, and she talks about different things, and her vocabulary is expansive. And I always say it's because when I first had her, I was in an LLM for child advocacy program, and she was a baby, but I would sit on my lap, and I would be in class, and she'd listen to the professor orate. And I say, like, you know, if you expose babies to like elevated advanced speaking, they're going to come out with a vernacular that's pretty incredible. Yes. And so I'm like, you've already got an LLM, so you're good to go, girl.
Yes. Oh my goodness. She's an honorary.
Yes, and she was actually. They made so it was actually 3 of us in my class who had just had babies, and our professor director who ran the program made them like little onesies and said they were graduates of the. Oh my god! And they let them go across the stage too, so it was really cute.
I know you would be so proud if she followed your footsteps. If she chooses to follow,
I know if she chooses to. Obviously, I'm not gonna make her, but if she were,
I can just hear her like, Mom.
I really do. There's someone in Virginia who he's a male, but his mother was also a lawyer, and I think they like opened their own firm together, and so it was really cute. So people are out there doing it.
Yes. There was a Black male. I think I saw it on Facebook. I wish I would have pulled it up. He just got sworn by his father, who's a judge.
Oh, nice!
Yeah. Just imagine this, the beautiful, like the generations. Mm-hmm. So take us through. Like I'm curious to know. Take us through like the day to day. Like, what does your day to day look like as a lawyer?
Whew. So my day to day as a lawyer, first of all, is getting my kids up so I can get to work on time.
So what time do you wake up to get everybody ready?
Well, actually, I wake up at 3 to pray, and then I'll try to like fall back asleep a little bit, and then I try to get everyone up at around 7. and we try to get out the door, whatever that looks like, piece by piece, kid by kid. But so when I get to work, finally, after dropping off my lovely babies, with civil litigation, it's a lot of like in-office work. It's not as frequent that you go to court. So I'm doing like a lot of like research and writing or just like emails, a lot of emails. Oh my God. And then, so you're just like doing memos, you're doing like communicating with the clients, updates and looking for experts. And yeah, it's a lot of in-office desk work. And then every once in a while, I will say you sprinkle in with like a court hearing. And so it's really cool within the healthcare sphere. There's a lot of like investigation stuff. So I do like site visits or interviews, depositions. And so that kind of makes it exciting because you get more of interaction with people and nurses and seeing kind of like a glimpse into their world. So yeah, it can be, I would say this practice area that I'm in is a lot more exciting than what I was doing previously. I was doing consumer finance litigation, and that was very dull.
So you're up away from the desk a lot, so you're able to talk to...
Well, no, I wouldn't say a lot, but I believe this practice area provides the opportunity to do so more. You get more interaction with, that comes from like client interviews and just trying to figure out what happened in the course of care that I think just wasn't present in like the consumer finance sphere, because you're just kind of dealing with a discrepancy with like some sort of billing procedure that was a lot of paper digging and didn't enjoy that.
So what are your thoughts on Olivia Pope? Do you watch the lawyer shows?
Oh my gosh. I wear the white hat every day, honey. No, listen, when I used to work in Philly and like I would sometimes take the trolley into work and I was walking in my heels and my little trench coat, I just knew I was Olivia Pope.
Yes.
You couldn't tell me that I was not Olivia Pope when I was walking down those streets.
Are they accurate? Is it accurate? Or is it more dramatic than...
It's way more dramatic.
Oh, okay.
Half the stuff that you see people do in the courtroom on those TVs, they could not say that in court. It is objectionable and a mistrial like every time. Like you cannot, those soliloquies you see people going, you can't do that. And like really you're not supposed to be like personalizing it to you. So like a lot of the acting is like, and my father and this, you're not really supposed to be interjecting yourself into it because you just can't do that. Okay. Just with the rules of evidence and different stuff. So I would say I enjoy watching Suits.
That's our show, ain't it?
I really enjoy
Did we get through it? It's so many seasons.
It's so many seasons. I've seen all of it.
And then when Meghan Markle left, I was like,
Yeah.
It wasn't the same.
No, it wasn't. But
they brought it back though with different. Mike is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a show that I really enjoyed being a lawyer watching.
Was it close? Do you think? Like
they do like mergers and transactions and stuff, and I never really got into that side of law. But to some extent, I think it's the closest that I've seen.
Yeah. I think they're more serious than a lot of the other shows. Yeah,
and then I also say I enjoyed. There used to be this show called For the People, and they only had like 1 or 2 seasons, and they got canceled, and I was devastated. But they were federal attorneys, and that was I felt like a realistic experience watching, because I did like a federal clerkship for a magistrate when I was in law school, and so seeing that, I was really excited to see that. And I mean, obviously there's still the dramatizations of like things you can't do in court, but they kind of tracked with what it would look like. And then
what about How to Get Away with Murder?
Oh no, that's not. Now I like
she's just a good actress.
Yeah,
I think.
And I think when they would have the court scenes, yeah. But again, I wouldn't. That was a legal drama, but I wouldn't say that's like something like maybe if I was a law student, then I would really be like, oh yeah, this is speaking to me because it was more in the law school setting.
Yeah. Okay.
There was another show. It was like related to Law and Order. It was like kind of like a spinoff of it, and I forget what it was called. But that one, that tracked like almost 100% in the criminal federal practice area. But I forget the name of that show. But so yeah, it's been like 3 or 4 shows that I'm like, yeah, that's it.
This is what I want to know. So, you know, when people say lawyers are liars, do you disagree with that?
I do.
Or do you feel like they have to bend their truth? Fluff. Do lawyers fluff?
I think lawyers advocate.
Okay, that was a lawyer answer. Do lawyers without
you was like, that was a lawyer answer. Yes, it was.
Do they make the necessary adjustments to their statements?
I think we tell the truth in an advocacy fashion. In the way that best presents our client, we tell the truth.
You tell the truth according to your perspective, or
no?
to facts?
I tell the truth according to the facts.
Facts.
So if you think about it, if you committed a crime, you did it. I know you did it. You know you did it, but you feel you deserve mercy. Mm-hmm. There's a way you can present what you did in a way that doesn't make you look like a bad guy. Do you think that's a lie? Because you technically are a bad guy. You committed a crime.
So you paint.
I know. I tell a story. I tell my client's story in a way that makes him seem deserving of mercy. Yeah.
That's solid.
I had a client recently. He did exactly what they said he was going to do. And they still overturned the situation because of the way we told his story. Because that's what my job is to do. I'm supposed to represent you. And even if you did something wrong, you deserve representation. And it's on how I present what you did to the court, to the decider of fact, make a decision on what happened. So, yeah, you could have stolen from the store. But when I tell you that your kids were back at home hungry, that you were about to get evicted and you whatever, and you thought that you can say it without saying it, or you can go ahead and flat out say it. So I think advocacy and storytelling, you present the situation in a way that, like, maybe some people say you're lying. I don't necessarily see it as lying. I see it as advocacy. Because I think everyone is deserving of justice and mercy. So if I know something to be a fact, I'm not going to say that didn't happen. But I am going to tell a story that presents that fact in the best light. Some people might say that's fluffing. But no, I didn't say that fact didn't occur.
Right.
I just said, let me give you the backstory of the person's life. And let me give you what was going on at the time. Let me tell you what's going on in their head. And then let me tell you what actually happened. Now, knowing all of that, what would you have done? And what do you think the person is deserving of? That's my philosophy on how, like, I do cases. If I know someone did it, I'm going to tell everything that led to that moment and what the person was thinking in their head at the time. I'm not just going to be like, yes, he stole from the store. He needs to go to prison for 5 years. Because that's not true, in my opinion.
So in telling this story, what part does the law play?
The law plays
in his actions.
The law is here. Right. And it says, I don't know, I'm just saying a hypothetical, and I keep going to stealing from the store. The law is here, and it says that if you commit petty larceny, you are entitled to imprisonment for 3 to 5 years and a fine of $2,000. That's the law.
Right.
And then there's a judge sitting there making a decision whether that law should apply to you, or should they be able to extend mercy considering the whole circumstance. And so it's my job to let the court see the whole circumstance, say what the law requires, and then say the whole circumstance, though. Because it's just like with the case, maybe, with the doctor that you read about.
Yeah.
Technically, when she readjusted her shoulder, the arm broke. But she didn't do anything wrong.
She's doing her job.
She was doing her job.
Right.
But someone's arm was broken. Does that mean she is medically negligent? No. It just means that was whatever. So when you're thinking about it, it's just like, what am I trying to say? What is the best outcome for everyone? Now, when I was a prosecutor, like, I needed to consider the best outcome for, like, the community, my client. Like, I had a lot of different factors to think about. But, like, if you're doing, like, private defense or, like, just civil litigation defense or whatever, technically my only duty is to my client. But I still have ethical obligations as a lawyer that I sat before the ethics, had to take an ethics exam, and when I signed my name to be an attorney. Like, I'm an officer of the court. I have an oath that I swore to be truthful. And so I'm always going to tell the truth. Now, if somebody lies out there, probably. But I'm not going to lie. But I am going to tell the story that is presenting my client in the best fashion.
Yeah.
Because I do think people do wrong things, but it's not always because they were trying to do the wrong thing. And I don't think that means they're entitled to the whole sledgehammer of the law. It's just like in spiritually, we technically are sinners and we're entitled to, under the law, die.
Yeah.
But Jesus advocates for us and says, oh, Lord, have mercy. They don't know what they do.
Yes. Thank you, Lord.
So I'm just trying to be like Jesus.
Girl, this is your profession. It's truly.
I'm just trying out here
who
to
you
do the
are.
Lord's work. Help people. Because it's really, really, people really go through some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And it affects them in weird ways. And it's even down to, like, psychologically, they really didn't understand that was wrong. Now, there's repercussions to everyone's actions, but I think there's a way in which, when you consider people's life, you've got to be, they need someone advocating for them for things that they were wronged and are now acting out of from that trauma. And I think that's, like, I feel the most passionate when I realize, oh yeah, they did do something wrong, but they didn't deserve this, and this. And then I'm able to talk about that, and that makes me happy.
And make a difference. And set some people free. That's awesome.
Because people don't deserve it. You don't deserve the whole hammer of the law all the time. You don't need the whole book thrown at you. Sometimes you just need a little talking to. And this is enough to wake you up and be like, oh, maybe I need to read the fine print so I don't accidentally submit.
And some people, like, how our parents are like, sometimes you got to touch the stove to see if it's hot. Some people, it takes one time to get in trouble.
And I think that's true for so many different areas of our life. And it's just like, some people are not getting caught. And then some people are. And so when they got caught,
it's that one time, to set them straight.
And I'm like, everybody been doing this now. Everybody been doing this now. They ran the red light and they took the picture. And we make mistakes in life.
Yeah.
But it's just like, sometimes there's a story that prevails that you're entitled to redemption or mercy or grace or whatever.
Amen.
And I think, like, that's what a lawyer's job is to do, is to say, like, no, this person is entitled to this. I know the law says this for this particular crime, but this is what was going on. This is this person's life. This is how it would affect them. They're willing to acknowledge this, and they're willing to make amends here. Is there a way we can come to the table and come up with, like, a resolution that works for everyone and that makes everyone whole? Because let's say, we're talking about criminal activity, it's not always the case that someone going to jail for their actions will actually make the victim whole. Sometimes a whole different situation whether it be an apology or just paying them the money to repair whatever it was, that's what actually makes the person whole. But if we are so tied to the book on what the law says this person deserves, we'll miss out that's not even what rectifies the situation,
That's so true. And I love that you said the other factors, because my major was sociology. I didn't go as far as you in education, but the thing that I loved about sociology was it was explaining how your environment affects your decisions. And sometimes your socioeconomic status can cause you to make choices that you aren't considering the law. Because, like you said, trying to feed a family. That man was not considering what's the consequence at this moment? That's still these
You're not-
diapers, still this food.
Right. You're not thinking
You know?
about that the store owner, this is their, how they feed their family, and they're running this business. And if you keep stealing their inventory, how's it affecting them? But for that store owner, if they were to give the merchandise back unharmed, or if they were to pay for the merchandise after the fact, that might just as much make them whole as you having to do whatever. And so I just think it's important that, number one, as lawyers, yes, a lot of people don't like attorneys. People say they're lying or whatever the case may be. But when it boils down to it and you're in trouble and you need an attorney, you want someone who's standing there going to bat for you, defending whatever you did and the reasons that you did it. And it's not to say that they're lying about what you did. I think a great attorney will tell the facts, and you're required to do that. But you have an obligation to represent the full story as it pertains to that client. And I don't see that as lying.
That face you made. Oh man. So what advice would you give someone who's a young professional who wants to pursue your profession?
My first piece of advice would be to just work hard. I think I've met some people who want to be lawyers who, and when I say work hard at it and don't give up. I've met so many people who want to be lawyers and for whatever reason get discouraged and just never become a lawyer. And I think I've also met people who want to be lawyers and they hit obstacles and roadblocks and they got rejected from law school, multiple law schools, keep getting the score on the LSAT that would exclude you from entrance into law school. And they keep going and they will take the test for years. And they are about to graduate law school.
That's so awesome.
And so for me, it's like I went to law school after and they call it going straight through. I didn't take a gap year. I went from college to law school and was, by the grace of God, able to obtain a LSAT score that would get me interested into a great school. But that's not everyone's story. And I see so many people get discouraged. And I just want people to know that it's people in your shoes who have not passed those tests that you feel like you need to pass. And they are successful and they become attorneys. It might be that it took them a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But I found that people who, worked a real job before becoming a lawyer are actually more prepared for law school.
Oh, wow.
Because they treat it like a job and they come to class and they're going there 9 to 5, reading, studying in between classes, and they go home. And then people who were just fresh out of college, they're still in that realm of oh, I got a test tomorrow, but they have a more disciplined approach to law school. So it's not to use as an exclusion, but it's something that can actually make you better and to be more focused and more disciplined and determined. So just don't give up and work very hard.
That is such sound advice. That's awesome, girl. You almost make me want to go. Look, you almost make me want to go back to school.
Almost.
Ooh, just for fun, what's your go-to coffee order?
So it's always, that's a very hard question because that can be very seasonal.
Oh, okay. So this season, what's your summer coffee order?
Right now, I've just been doing it's a hard question. Right now, I'm into nutty flavors. Now, I just stopped getting I was getting this butter pecan latte, iced latte or whatever, and it was everything I needed and
that
more.
Sounds so good.
And then I just recently got into going to Dunkin' or whatever, which I always said I would never be a Dunkin' girl, but I just started. I just started being a Dunkin' girl, okay? And they have what's called a Dunkin' latte. Have you had that?
No, it sounds good.
And so I was getting the Dunkin' latte, but with butter pecan. And when I say that is it should not be allowed to be served to the people.
I'm going to try that.
Because it's so good. But it's like, let me say, it's very rich.
It's sweet? Yeah, okay.
So, with caution, get it. But, because I'm not really, like, I like sweet, but I need it to be, like, very mild, you know, tempered. But, so that's really good. But it takes me pretty much all day to drink it because it's so sweet. And then, if it's not, like, a specialty drink, I would just be, like, a normal caramel ice.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah. I'm also, like, a brown sugar shaken espresso type situation.
Oh, these sound so good. So you're more on the sweet. You're not on like you would never do straight black.
I went through a phase, and it was like a phase where I was doing black, and it was actually maybe it was connected to trauma because I was doing a clerkship, and like when I would go in there, I would get me a black. Anytime I went to work, I would go and I make me a black.
People drink black coffee.
But it had like a nice like raspberry note undertone. So
to me, it has to be a quality bean because
it was a quality bean.
Okay, I'm about to say I can't drink cheap.
It had
black,
like a dark chocolate raspberry undertone. Ooh. And so although it's black, nothing added, no sugar, nothing. I drank that, and it was like I was in a routine. Every day I'd come in, I would get my laptop, I would sit there, I would draft my little brief, whatever. I would sip on my black coffee, but that was a phase.
Okay, so no more.
And if I'm having dessert, and I want coffee paired with that, then it needs to be black. I don't want that makes too much. Yeah. So that's the only time I'll drink black is if I have dessert and I'm having like coffee. But yeah, so I kind of vary between just like a regular caramel iced latte or brown sugar shaken espresso. And then I every once in a while have to have that Dunkin' latte from Dunkin'. But that's crack.
Girl, I want that right now. I want to go ahead and DoorDash that. Right?
Listen, at your own risk, order that thing because you're not gonna stop. So I'm warning you.
I'm gonna start with a small.
I'm warning you. You get it, but don't call me when you can't.
Okay, Duncan, sponsor her.
Yes. Here's my code, 30% off. No.
So you and your sister are coffee drinkers. Y'all are some coffee girls. Y'all know y'all stuff. Like, talk about your adventure in coffee and.
Yes. So my sister and I have an Instagram page called Posh Puck, and it really just kind of started off because we were like making like coffee dates with each other, and we would try like local coffee shops, and then we're like, you know what, we can do like videos, like reels, and just kind of like talk about the experience. And like what we were finding was like when we were doing it, the like local coffee shops were really into it. They would like even give us like free coffee and be like, oh no, try more, and like it was just really good experience, just like bonding time. And I really love it because it gives me an outlet from work. Yeah. So, like, you know how when you go to work or, like, I don't know, you're in some kind of conference, they're like, what's one fun fact about yourself?
That's the fun fact.
I don't have to worry about my fun fact no more. They ask me, what do you do in your spare time? I say, I'm an at-home barista. And that sends the whole room into an uproar.
I saw your machine, girl. Top quality.
People love coffee. So it's just a conversation starter. It's just really like, honestly, a coffee community. Like, I'm starting to notice like different people who have like the traveling coffee trucks. So stay tuned for more. But yeah, it's really cool. I think it kind of just started off as like, oh, let's have like a sister time. And then it turned into like, no, let's like really get into this.
I love it.
And it really also started from like the pandemic. So during the pandemic, I did like pretty much everything that you were supposed to do. Air fryer, dog, coffee, like, I mean, anything. And became like recipes, all that stuff. And so my husband built me like a coffee station.
Oh, nice.
And then like I started making videos, and it was like really popping when I was doing it in the pandemic. Then I kind of fell off and moved back home and reasserted my like coffee station and stuff like that. And it just like turned into something that we could do, and like it keeps us on track. And like I really like it.
I love the aesthetics though of all the different places, and people like to find coffee shops. Like,
right. And like it's fun also, like, because like I don't want to go, well, let me say this, I don't want to go back to school, but one of the
you'll be a barista?
Well, we were looking for barista classes. We are in the process.
That would be so fun.
No, yes. But I think the most enjoyable thing about being a student that I recall was being able to like go to a coffee shop and do your work. And like that was what I enjoyed when I was like in law school or like a college student, is like finding your little study place. And so it kind of like gives me that vibe where I can like insert myself back into that, you know, realm, but like maybe just take my Bible and like take notes, but like be there by myself and like leave the kids at home.
I know that's right. So what are your handles?
TikTok is at Poshbuck.
Okay.
And then Instagram at _Poshbuck.
Okay.
Yeah. And
that's everything?
Oh, and then
then what's your personal?
My personal Instagram is K _law_.
Okay. And those who want to contact you?
Yeah. Hit me up on K _law_.
Is that for professional like help?
Oh, now professional help, just type in Michaela D. Black on Google and I will pop up and you can send me a work email.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Michaela. This has been fun. Michaela Lambert, respect, Antoine. I always say Michaela. Michaela Lambert, Michaela Black professionally, right? You go by Black. Okay. This is a space for grace where you can help your next sister and tell your grace story. Thank you for joining us. I hope you were inspired and encouraged. Be blessed. Grace sisters.